The amount of content foretelling the disruption of the legal industry is legion. And yet, most lawyers are cruising along an increasingly choppy sea of opportunity, mildly concerned about low employment numbers and fiercely concerned about high competition, unaware of the massive leviathan poised to swallow up the entire profession. Too much hyperbole? Maybe it won't be enough. Lola versus Skadden and the automation of the legal profession from the Yale Journal of Law and Technology is an epic take on legal disruption from forward-leaning legal professionals. The article outlines a recent decision that contains an incantation of doom for the definitions of legal work and what it means to practice law. Today on Lawsome, we're speaking with some of the authors and we'll reveal the facts of the case, unpack the constructs, both literal and psychological, that hold the legal industry back from innovation, and to find the next steps possible. The legal profession finds itself standing on a precipice, and to make a lasting change, lawyers might need a leap of faith. Let's go.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that prefers a little extra habeas on our corpus. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community with the latest in personal and professional developments. I'm Jake Sanders, a giant flightless bird living in Colorado. And with me is the mole man of Alcatraz himself, Paul Julius. How'd you escape prison this time, Paul?
Dude, a lanyard with a name tag and a clipboard can get you far. That's all I'm saying.
Blend in. I'm one of you.
Act like you belong.
I'm one of you. I have a face tattoo, I understand. But doesn't everyone have a face tattoo here? What's on the show today?
On the show today, we talk about legal innovation and automation with an article from weforum.org. We discuss the future of law and the Lola versus Skadden case with Michael Simon and Alvin Lindsay. And then we place our company under the lights for 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The article today is from weforum.org. It's by Paul Rowlinson. It's called Will Lawyers Become Extinct in the Age of Automation? I'll give you a little brief taste. Paul writes, the AI that we are seeing on the market now and for the foreseeable future, which I am not naive enough to pass as any longer than 3 to 5 years, will enable us to deliver better legal services quicker, more efficiently, and sometimes cheaper. But it doesn't change the game yet. Put simply, innovation isn't about the business of law. It's about the business of business. Investment in tech must be in tandem with investment in talent, because let's be frank, the market will kill those who don't adapt. They are the ones who should be scared of the machines. For them, the robots are coming. The really wise lawyers, they know it's not one versus the other.
The market will kill. The market kills again.
Oh my God. It's just the road to better revenues is paved with old companies or something, or dead law firms.
This guy's a little dramatic, don't you think?
It's pretty good, but he kind
it's a good article.
He gives you the both. He's not saying that it's tomorrow or it's the Terminator, but there is. He says it really, really great by having better conversations and having a better understanding of the world. That's what he's suggesting that lawyers have to adapt to these new tech innovations that that he's foreseeing, automating tasks and discovery work and some of those doldrum kind of stone stepping paths that lawyers take. You have to do a whole bunch of bad document review, and then that helps you be a better lawyer. But people hate that stuff. So that's the kind of disruption that we talk about later in the interview. That's the disruption that Paul's talking about in this article. What was your take, Paul?
the one thing I noticed in here, and you and I were just chatting about it, and we get into it with the guys later, is it doesn't really talk too much about accountability. It doesn't talk about what's going to happen if this doc review, what happens if it gets something wrong, or what if we're starting to put together AIs that are actually making decisions or writing opinions, and something goes, like, who's going to hold that accountable? It's I think it's a little bit more, we're not at the point really where we're having robots fully perform unobserved surgery, right? And so I
Secret
think
surgery.
this is right. So I think this is kind of there too. Like there's and you're right. There's a whole bunch of business innovation that's happening that law does need to catch up with.
Right.
But I think it's going to have to be kind of smart. And I really like what you said when you were saying, things like document review. I mean, it was tedious. It was expensive. I don't know that the people who were doing it actually even like doing it. That kind of stuff, that's ripe for automation.
Right. Right. But then that leads the way for automation to do more complex tasks. It just needs to get more input, like Johnny Five and Short Circuit. Just keep feeding it and it'll keep learning. And so it could get to that point when it's writing more complicated, complicated memorandums and actually participating in that, what was considered once legal work. But the people that we interview, Mike Simon and Al Lindsay, they outline this future that isn't as bleak as that I would expect. And there is a little bit of institutional barriers, the unauthorized practice of law. The American Bar Association is really strict about that stuff. But the language in the Lola versus Skadden case, which is what we talk about later, is kind of putting a lot of that, standard, what was considered legal work in jeopardy. But here's one thing that you mentioned earlier about accountability. And I wanted to say it in our interview, but I didn't get a chance to. And I think when we talk about the innovative skills of Silicon Valley, I think it's great that we all should be innovative, but there's something that's dangerous about everybody just moving fast and breaking things. And the fact is that law is not dealing with an app update or a software company. Like
you can't put in a bug fix to a contract.
Right. Or it's like the Constitution is we're like, this is like a living, breathing document that people interpret. And, that's what lawyers' jobs are. And you can't move fast and break that.
Right.
So in regards to like law, it seems that we are at some impasse where I'm not 100% sure if I'm supposed to be an entrepreneur or a Silicon Valley tech bro, or am I supposed to be standing up for what has come before us and the legacies that we have? I think lawyers are dealing with a lot more complicated internal mental machinery that maybe isn't just about them being skeptical or them just being pessimistic. I think there's something holding people back because this isn't an emoji. This isn't a poop emoji we're trying to make look amazing, because I can move fast and break through all the different iterations of code and make a really amazing poop emoji that's deliverable to all, mobile phones. That's the kind of innovation that software companies like, because they go to market with minimum viable products and then they just make it better. And that can't happen if I'm interpreting statute or law. Oh, it's a real quick and dirty way of getting you what? Like maybe I don't want the quick and dirty law because it's not going to hold up. What was the example that you had? What was the example of a tech leaning lawyer that gets in trouble?
Well, I think it was just we were talking about Patrick Palace and his Patbot and the different things, and then we went and checked out the parking lot, and we were thinking of the different applications, and I don't remember the exact context, but basically we said someone shows up, with an argument that this thing, maybe in the future spits out for them, and some judge says, where Where'd you get, what is that? Where'd you get that?
Mm-hmm.
And you say, oh, yeah, I got it. I just went to this guy's website and put in some stuff and it spit me out this thing. And here's this evidence it told me to enter and blah, blah, blah. I don't know that judge is going to react too favorably to
Yeah, they're going to be
that.
like, wait, what? Like the lawyer isn't even here right now. You just printed this thing off. They slapped their name on it.
You never even talked to a lawyer.
You never even talked to the lawyer. Yeah. So you brought that up, and I thought that was a really fascinating kind of a mental exercise because it puts you in the mind of what's happening today.
I think a good example of tech and innovation taking over that can maybe put this in something a little more concrete for people. Think about 10 years ago. You wanted to take the family on a road trip. You had an atlas. You stopped by the gas station and bought a map.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had what would have been like Yahoo Maps, stuff like that. You could go online and you could print out directions or whatever. Then after that comes the GPS.
Mm-hmm.
Then which was a standalone. You could buy a Garmin. Like, I could take me any. Now that's pretty standard on phones, and it's in your car. I can get in my car, not know anything about where or how I need to get where I'm going except the address, and know that I'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about. That's tech evolution now. You're using satellite technology in your car.
And I think it's important that we didn't notice it as turning on and turning off. It's
Absolutely.
like slowly, it crept into our lives, crept into our routines, and then all of a sudden, boom.
And it's not scary, and it's helpful.
Right. But for lawyers who are thinking about owning their own businesses and trying to run law firms and stuff, that's how this tech stuff happens. It's a frog boiling, and it's slow, but the minute it takes, and they talk about it later. Mike Simon brings it up about, these innovative trends is a slow rise. And then the minute it hits, this kind of peak, it completely flips and skyrockets. So you got to be prepared for that. We break off so many wonderful pieces from the knowledge tree in our interview. Lawyers got to be ready for this, regardless of what it is. But I make the point that anyone running a business needs to be thinking about this. So there's nothing specific and dangerous facing lawyers. It's just that they have a unique ability to control the construct of their disruption. And there's an opportunity for it to happen, and lawyers can take care of it, or they can get taken care of. Our interview lines all that up really beautifully. So
let's get to it.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
The internet can be a cold and unforgiving place. Every day, thousands of law firm websites go unvisited and unfairly labeled as worthless due to the inattention or misguided attempts at do-it-yourself marketing by their owners. Poor optimization and bad design principles have left these sites unable to realize the full potential of the digital landscape they're forced to exist in, and they're now trapped on page 3 of the search results in an endless cycle of bad management, leading to poor results, leading to disillusionment and loss. There's hope for these neglected websites in the form of a digital marketing company focused exclusively on law firms. Since 1999, Consultwebs has helped hundreds of lawyers connect to thousands of clients across the country using sound marketing principles based off an exhaustive track record of marketing campaigns that have already proven to be successful. If your website is underperforming, call Consultwebs at 800-872-6590 and get the clicks it so desperately needs. Please don't let another day full of unvisited pages go by. Take that step and call today. For them.
And now, for a lawsome interview.
Michael Simon is the principal of his own legal technology consulting firm, Seventh Samurai, and regularly serves as an adjunct professor. Alvin Lindsay is a litigation and international arbitration partner at Hogan Lovells, U.S. For over 2 decades, Mr. Simon and Mr. Lindsay have been frequent commentators on issues related to technology and the law. After having my wig blown off from reading their recent piece, on the Lola versus Skadden decision in the Yale Journal of Law and Technology. We connected, and we are honored to have them both on the show today. Mike, Al, thanks for showing up today.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Honored to be had.
You guys both contributed to this amazing piece, the Lola versus Skadden and the automation of the legal profession in the Yale Journal of Law and Technology. So can you guys give a brief overview of the case itself, and what are the facts and what are the implications around the decisions in this recent appeal?
Well, I can do that, and I do want to say a couple things first, though, before we get there. First of all, thank you, guys. I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate you reading the article. I very much appreciate the summary you put on Twitter. It's a great summary.
Thanks, sir.
I also want to say special thanks to Lola Sosa and to Paige Comparado, who were also authors. They're both associates at Hogan Lovells, and they did indeed contribute quite well. So, and this was a group effort. This was a team effort to put this together. And so that said, you know what? Let me see if I can do the facts in like 2 minutes.
Okay.
Let's make this a challenge. 2013-14 era was the age of contract e-discovery document reviewers trying to get back at folks. It's a terrible job. It's a miserable job. We've got stuff where people talk about it in the article. You can read it there. And one of the things that some of them did is they went after the companies they were working for overtime. All of those cases.
But lawyers don't get overtime, Mike, right? Lawyers don't get overtime.
We do not. And the reason we don't is the FLSA, Fair Labor Standards Act, deliberately excludes anyone engaged in the practice of law from receiving overtime. Now, all of these cases got dismissed, including David Lola's versus Skadden in the Southern District of New York. You know, it's just. In fact, here's a funny thing. There was pre-trial hearing or dismissal here, pre-motion hearing, I think they call it in Southern District. And the judge said, I'm very skeptical about this. The fact you're reviewing documents, even though it doesn't require legal judgment, there's a low threshold for the practice of law. All associates do this stuff. Dismiss the case. It seemed like every other case until suddenly the Second Circuit took up the case and decided to hear it. And at oral argument, something really extraordinary happened. One of the Second Circuit judges asked, if a computer can do that, how is that the practice of law under any jurisdiction? And this was, by the way, guys, this was sua sponte. You know, I was never an appellate lawyer. I was a trial lawyer, but I do believe, and Al, correct me if I'm wrong, appellate judges aren't supposed to do sua sponte stuff. Nobody briefed this.
They can do whatever they want, Mike. They're appellate.
We know that. Well, that's whether they could do it or whether they're supposed to. Yeah. But this was, nobody had briefed it. It was not in any of the appellate briefs. It was not part of the Southern District of New York discussion or order. Nothing. Out of the blue. And instead, in their written opinion, in reversing this, they said that anyone who undertakes tasks that could otherwise be performed entirely by a machine cannot be said to engage in the practice of law. And that sounds okay. That sounds like just another statement, just another thing. But when you think about it, that's an incredibly dangerous, incredibly bad standard, and incredibly dangerous standard. Because
if we want to protect our monopoly, right?
Yeah, and you want to make sure that we have lawyers being able to do things that require justice and judgment and wisdom. Yeah, it's a bad thing. If, on the other hand, you're great with robots doing all that, fantastic. That's the problem.
Al, do you have anything to add to that? Is there anything that struck you originally from the original case and the appeal that you feel is?
No, I think, it didn't surprise me. We actually got the CD of the oral argument and played it and listened to it. And, it just seemed like kind of a normal thing that might come up in an oral argument. What surprised me is that it actually became that one kind of innocent sounding question from out of nowhere, which forced, the counsel to say, Your Honor, if a machine can do it, it's not the practice of law. That became the central holding of the case. And, when you think about it, it's not a stretch to see how that could really erode, this monopoly, which is what it is, that, the ABA and lawyers have established on essentially UPL. And, paralegals can't practice law, but if you can somehow program a machine to do it, that's not the practice of law, so they're exempt. And it really, for lawyers wanting to protect their domain, that's certainly a threat. But we can't be Luddites. There's this inevitable march of technology, and it's growing, at this exponential rate that, people far smarter than me talk about. Mm-hmm. Elon Musk says he's closer to AI than anyone, and it scares the heck out of him because most people just don't know how powerful this stuff is and where we are kind of, in terms of its advancement.
I think that's the most important part, is I don't think people understand, and you guys kind of like lay it out in the piece, but this is different. This previously published threats against disruption of the legal profession, it didn't seem like it was taking. This seems like it's, at the same time you say Elon Musk is like this guy who has AI, but he couldn't get a submarine to rescue those kids. And, robots are scary, but a lot of people have Roombas. So I think, and I'm not necessarily scared of the Roomba, but I think
you should be.
Maybe.
Say, I'm sorry. Those things are terrifying.
But I'm wondering, just speaking specifically to the practicing attorney, why does this matter? Why does this finding matter more than all the other previous threats?
I think it's a couple of things. And by the way, one of the things that really attracted me to Lola and this case was, there was a certain disappointment afterwards. By the way, there was a whole bunch of folks who wanted to see the Second Circuit say, let's give the contract document reviewers overtime. Let's free the sometimes see pictures of galley slaves, power to the people. And it didn't really happen. But who did pick up on it were some of the tech entrepreneurs, our versions of Elon Musk. And more than a few of them wrote about how this decision freed them up to say, well, now that we're building robots that can do things, let's take the corollary. As soon as a robot can do something, it's no longer the practice of law. UPL is now gone. And so, you look at this, and I do understand. I very much understand the lawyers who say we've heard this before. One of the things we quote in the article is an article from 1963, wording about the robot takeover, and it quotes an article from 1950 something. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, when Al talked about that exponential power, and if you draw out an exponential graph, it looks like a long, boring sort of low-lying climb until all of a sudden it hits that tipping point and flips. And we're somewhere around that scary tipping point where things are happening, okay? When robots are driving cars, when robots are calling people, when robots are answering phones, this stuff is different now.
The people doing AI in Silicon Valley right now are making more than NFL quarterbacks, and there's a reason for that. And if I were some young brilliant kid coming out of Stanford, CS, I'd be looking around the world and looking for opportunities to displace human endeavor and jobs and automate those jobs. And I know that that's what a lot of smart people over there in Silicon Valley are focused on right now. And a number of them are focused on, the legal profession, which has traditionally enjoyed a monopoly, and we talk about that. And we talk about, the value that lawyers have traditionally gotten. What is it, Mike? $63 billion a year or something, because of that monopoly. Mm-hmm. And people are looking, for in the name of efficiency and progress, et cetera, to put us out of work. And the smart ones that are going to survive are going to have to adapt. And that's I think the end point of our article.
Mm-hmm. We're not saying that robots are going to replace all lawyers, but they are going to replace an awful lot of them, particularly those who do not adapt, who do not recognize that, this time is different.
There's different things about it too, where it's not even being replaced, but I think a lot of times you're going to be working alongside and using them in different ways. In your article, you talk about with Jillian Hadfield, and we've talked to her too. And one thing that she brought up was these terms and conditions that are so complicated that now they use machine learning and an AI to go through and review these things. And it's like, are we going to hit a point where we have an AI writing terms and conditions and then another AI reviewing them? Like, you know,
and if it's blockchain, they can all execute on them too. You know, hey, totally. why involve people at all in these contracts?
Because you people can't handle the data.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Totally. So it's interesting. And another thing in the piece you describe, and again, we talked to Jillian about this, and you guys really go into it very well in the article. But you talk about the institutional and psychological barriers that kind of stifle this sort of innovation in the industry. Can you describe those a little bit further for us?
Oh, lawyers are skeptical. I think we score, among the highest of anybody on skepticism, pessimism, which is considered, a loser trait for most people to be a pessimist. It doesn't work well in sales, for example. But lawyers, they've done studies in law schools, and the pessimistic law students fare far better than the optimistic ones. Plus you got that. You've got all sorts of kind of characteristics of hierarchy and kind of a ladder that you climb over the years. All these things just are exactly the opposite of, what's needed to kind of adapt to, embrace, and innovate using technology. So, we're a highly backward-looking profession. We say, things are this way because we've always done it this way, and that's the right way based on the past. There's going to be no disruption in this industry. Well, that we might have been lucky so far to some extent, although, the statistics are clear that, even the contract lawyers that we talk about, their jobs have been diminishing over the last decade, and largely being, replaced by, computer-assisted review, as we call it. So,
and it's kind of,
things are already changing, and when we hit that upslope on that exponential curve that Mike talked about, we better be ready, or forget it. You're going to be left in the dust.
Yeah, and I do want to add two things in there. First of all, Al is a great example of how not to be any of those things he just described. There are people out there who are the innovators. Watch them. But there's a second thing in there, resiliency. And by the way, we do talk about this in the article. We talk about Dr. Larry Richard, who's the one who gave those tests to lawyers, thousands of lawyers, to find out what their psychology was like. And there's one additional really important thing. Resiliency. Lawyers are terrified of failure, and when we do fail, it absolutely kills us. And so, add this skepticism, obsession with the past, lack of resiliency. Does that sound anything like Silicon Valley? Those that smart CS kid at Stanford that Al described? No, it sounds like the 180 degree opposite. We just need to get better. And by the way, also, I think it's worth saying, and sorry, I got my dogs howling in the background there. I do also think it's worth noting, we've done as a profession really well, especially the folks at the top. And, no less a personage than Richard Susskind. The guy teaches at Oxford and Cambridge, and he's a knight. He's been knighted. Has said that he goes into rooms full of millionaires and tells them that their business model is wrong. That's a tough thing, but things are changing. And sorry, it sounds like the Hound of the Baskervilles back there.
Okay. It's all good.
The Hound he's howling for changes.
Even the dog is a forward-thinking dog. No, so well, go ahead, Paul. Sorry, brother.
So I was just going to say, you're right. And to illustrate, I mean, a lot of times, particularly the people who are doing the tech, that's how you find out what you need to modify. That's how you find out what you need to work on more is you put something in and try and break it. And so, yeah, that's just a very contrary sort of attitude.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jake.
No, I mean, that's like the Google rules of innovation, right? You get your product, get your software product out there, and if it's got bugs, we'll fix them later. That's the opposite of what I do every day, which is make sure everything is absolutely perfect before sending it to the client, and then they make sure things are even more perfect before you submit it to the court or whomever.
Not to fault lawyers, but that sounds frighteningly similar to almost every person trying to run their own small business today. It seems like a lot of people who are running their own business are sharing the same frustrations and not wanting to make a mistake, wanting to go to market with a perfect solution, not willing to, fix those in the beta versions or the 2.0 and the 3.0. A lot of people don't like that. I know tons of people, in the creative industry, marketing, advertising, they don't want to do anything half measure. They only want to go all the way. And I think there's sort of like a cultural problem too that helps support the fear of innovation. Whereas a lot of those people in Silicon Valley, they have this place that they've created, a safe zone where they can destroy things and move fast and break stuff. But they have a kind of zone around it. As we are starting to see, Facebook is that zone isn't so tight around some of those things. Some of those things that they destroyed were kind of institutions that we need.
I don't know, like democracy,
that old thing. But I do think that a lot of lawyers are wondering, should I be this entrepreneur? Should I be the Elon Musk? Or should I help the legal industry as a whole change? And I'm just wondering what you guys have as far as advice. What do you think lawyers can do today to shape out a career in the legal profession that is, future proof? Are there skills you think lawyers need to sharpen?
Well, we talk about three things essentially. We talk about innovation, and that doesn't mean you have to be a coder, but that does mean you might want to know how to use the different technologies, which, at least for a time are going to be still siloed. So you might have a, IBM Watson under Ross doing, legal research and writing, and you might have, one of these other products doing document review. And certainly you want to brush up on your skills on knowing all these platforms and how to take the results of these platforms and filter that into, judgment and wisdom, which is, the last thing we believe lawyers will always need to be able to provide is judgment and wisdom. Problem is, when you are diminishing the work that many young lawyers traditionally have thrived upon, reviewing documents, researching and writing memoranda, when you supplant that but with computers, which is, I think, both already underway and in the short term going to be, even more so, then you don't give the opportunity to those young lawyers to grab the experience they need to eventually be able to provide the judgment and wisdom. Because we all know you don't, law school teaches a lot of things great, teaches you how to think like a lawyer, but it doesn't necessarily give you judgment and wisdom, and that often usually comes through years of experience. So if you're cutting out that opportunity, that's a problem. But the other kind of the third angle that we think lawyers should pay close attention to is maintaining the accountability of these computer systems. It's all AI is all a function of big data. It's all data driven, and that data can be either wrong, it can be used incorrectly, it can be analyzed incorrectly. GIGO, all that stuff is that we cite one case where in terms of sentencing guidelines, the data was racist and didn't intend to be, but was. Lawyers may hopefully always be necessary, if not just to maintain the accountability of these machines. And on this data point, which I'm personally fascinated with, lawyers have to do a better job of owning, and probably everybody, but from where I sit, lawyers need to do a better job of owning their own data. I work at a very large law firm with over 2,400 lawyers around the world. Every day we have very highly paid associates doing, legal research on the internet. And, the way they research, the clicks and keystrokes that they enter, I argue are data and valuable data. And if the providers of these legal researchers, the Westlaws and Lexuses of this world are capturing that data, they might very well find use for it in the near future. And, I keep thinking that lawyers need to do a better job, we as a profession, of owning that data and prohibiting, others from purloining it. Just one of many things we get to worry about in this day and age.
So you guys mentioned Ross. Al, it seems like Mike says you're on the you're on the front porch of innovation. So, who, in your guys' estimation, who's doing the good work in the legal tech space? Are there any services that you guys are working on that help bridge the legal tech gap for lawyers?
There are folks I do work with. There's companies I work with, but that's part of what I do for my consulting company. And some of that is out front, but some of it's behind the scenes. So I'm going to defer in mentioning any companies. I don't want to.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, but I will talk about some of the people out there who are doing that, and then I'll let Al, if he wants to talk about some of the companies, because there certainly are some. You look at the people who are doing this and talked about it. You have to, of course, start with, Richard Susskind. I mean, he's truly the leader in this, and he's been writing about this stuff since the early 90s. But we know who's doing this today. You can go on Twitter and you can see the things that Ken Grady, who was head of Safe Lean and now teaches at Michigan State Law School. William Henderson, well-known professor at Indiana Law School. He writes the series of Law and Innovation, and he's got someone who is now doing some guest work for him, Jay UM, who, another one of the folks who was at Safe really focused on taking the lessons that have been learned in Silicon Valley about innovation and applying that to the law. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Casey Flaherty and the studies he has done on the skills that lawyers need and that they don't have. And so these are folks very much building up and very much worth following and reading their materials on where we need to be as a profession. And I will say one thing, just to reflect on what Al said. The idea of, hey, all this change in the law, let's go learn to code. I get in big trouble by going in front of some of my fellow academics and saying, no, let's not teach lawyers to code. If you want to learn to code, hey, great. Or if you know how to code, great. But this is more about learning how to talk and work with the people who are doing this. These are big teams. This is big change, and it's not going to be done by one person sitting in their garage. Those days of Silicon Valley are over, and so you need to be able to understand it, respect them, work with them, and be a part of that team. And, to me, those are the kinds of folks who are going to change the world.
Look, in terms of products, and without mentioning product names, but where are we right now? I mean, this isn't, we're really fanciful thinking about the future, because right now we already have, computer-assisted review. I mean, technology-assisted review, or CAR, TAR, whatever they call it, which works very well. I've used it on a number of cases. In one case, I was able to quantify that it saved the client over $1 million in lawyer time. And this is out there now. And that case, by the way, was involved, South Korea, and reviewing documents in Korean and having, programs set up so that none of their personal protected information would get out. Wow. It was fairly complex stuff, handled fairly easily by computers. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the litigator side. Then you've got these folks who do due diligence and, who use kind of very similar, if not identical, document review technologies for that. But then you've got what we used to consider contract compiling programs that would just kind of take clauses from contract and put them together to draft a will or whatever. But these have become, incredibly sophisticated now, currently, as we sit here, in terms of the analytics that they can do and the way they can provide, truly customized contracts. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was one study done recently by an Israeli company that their product was able to do in 26 seconds, what the average lawyer took 6 hours to do, something like that. Mm-hmm. So, this is here and now, and where I see this headed, I always kind of laugh that we lawyers put out all these client alerts that, anytime a new case comes out or new regulation, there's a million client alerts, and these client alerts are all out there on the internet. And I've been for years now, whenever I want to do quick research, I don't go on Westlaw, I go on Google and read all these, wonderful law firms' commentaries. It gets you very quickly up to speed on some aspect of the law. And, it is already now, we are starting to see companies. A friend of mine told me about a company that that does legal memoranda by going out there with bots, finding the most current stuff with the algorithms to, find what the most trustworthy and current paragraphs are on any particular, legal issue, compiles a rough draft of a memorandum, which is then, vetted by some lawyer in India and then, provided to the client at, a fraction of the price that it would take a big law firm, associate to develop. So this is where we are now. It's going to get more and more, at least right now where we are, we still have these, these silos of different kind of specialty areas. Criminal law, as I mentioned earlier, there's computer programs out there on chances of recidivism, et cetera, that judges use to determine bail amounts and these kinds of things. But they're all siloed. So I don't know much about the criminal stuff, and they don't know much about my e-discovery stuff. I just do see the day when the silos kind of come together into one massive silo, and I don't know if it'll be a Watson or a Google or a Siri or
a Roomba,
what we'll call, or a Roomba.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
we've got to stay ahead of that. I tell my daughters, who are college age, you've got to stay ahead of that stuff, because otherwise it's going to crush you. And I do think, we have some optimism in our art. This isn't all doom and gloom, and the robots are going to take all our jobs. There are, if you look at it and approach it from the right direction, you can and will survive and thrive.
Can I end with a couple of stories? Actually, I want to compare and contrast some things that happened to me in the last couple of years, and a couple of young lawyers or lawyers to be I've met.
Sure.
And I'll start with the doom and gloom one, since that seems to be the theme. But I really don't think we're doom and gloom. I think there is a lot of hope here for those who can recognize what is happening and take advantage of it, because there is tremendous opportunity. So we've got a lot of younger lawyers who remind me of someone I met a couple of years ago. I was teaching at Michigan State, was there for my first class. I would fly in. And just finished the first class, and had some folks walking in for the next one, for whoever had the next class up. And somebody walks up to me, some student walks up to me and says, "Oh, well, you must be the professor teaching e-discovery. I was thinking of taking that, but it's just too scary." And I said, what's scary about it? "Well, you have to learn all this technology." "I'm not teaching anybody technology. I'm teaching you the law." "Well, that changes too." I'm like, "We've had amendments, twice in the last 12 years on that." And so, finally it just kind of gave the shudder and stalked off. And it's like, no, I just want the law to be the same, and I don't want it to change. And, I'm just an adjunct, so I'm not allowed to go to them and say, "Well, then I guess you're heading for obsolescence." I didn't want to say anything.
That's
anything,
That's a pessimist.
I let the tenured people do that.
Right.
The tenured professors do that. But, and it just struck me as, wow, that's really kind of typical. And yet, a couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to grab lunch with somebody, a friend of a friend. This is a younger guy, been out doing a lot of really cool tech stuff for a few years, and decided to go to one of the local schools here in Boston. He got admitted. He's just starting, and was asking me and my buddy, and this buddy of mine's also very high, very, very, actually teaches analytics in the law now at Boston College. Wow. And he's asking us all about, how lawyers are, and he's got all these ideas about changing stuff. And God, we're telling him all the bad news, all the stuff that Al talked about. Lawyers are skeptical, don't want to change. Mm-hmm. It actually makes them better in the profession. And yet we weren't trying to get him down, and I'm glad we couldn't, because what he saw was the opportunity. And he was the kind of guy, when I said, "Hey, it's all about resilience," he's like, "But I love to fail. Failure's great. That's how you learn." And those are the kind of folks that we need. Those are the kind of folks the kind of attitude that, if you can have that, if you can see that, if you can go to law school and get the practical opportunities, not on coding. Don't go there to learn how to program. Go there to learn how to be a lawyer. Go do the clinics, go do the internships, go get the jobs with the firms, do the stuff, do the lawyering, but have the better attitude, have the ability and the knowledge to work with the tech folks. use that. And yeah, this is a great time. This is a fantastic time because when so many things are being upended, opportunities are being created.
Disruption.
One of the more exciting things is the new types of law that will happen from all the new technology. There will be disrupted industries everywhere, but they're going to need lawyers to help them figure out what's going on. And so lawyers need to help be on the bleeding edge of everyone's edge, because you don't know when somebody's going to ask you a question. Hey, can they do that? Or, hey, is this legal? And then that lawyer better be, willing to cough up, that wisdom and justice. But you guys end the piece in a really, really great, positive way, telling people how they can kind of adapt their skills. But I think that's skills that not only lawyers, but everybody who is entering the workforce now needs to embrace, because I think we're all headed for disruption in some kind of way.
Oh, yeah. We're all in it. We're all
We agree.
tremendously in it.
Yeah. So anyway, let's wrap this up. How can people find out more about you guys?
I'll let Al go first on that. He's easier to find.
Hey, I'm easy to find. Google Alvin Lindsay at Hogan Levels, and you'll find me, and you'll find how to contact me. I just really like to talk with anybody who's interested in this area, or of course, who has a litigation or arbitration they need representation with.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And for me, I will admit that I am the epitome of the old adage about the cobbler's children having no shoes, and so I have a website. It's not very good. I need to fix it one of these days. But in between that, you can find the stuff that I post on Twitter at Ronan Mike Simon, or find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to shoot me a message. Feel free to follow the stuff I write. That's right. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, this article is huge. We were warned, don't make it too long, and we cut it. One of the things everybody else did was to keep me in check, because if it was for me, this would be a 200-page article, even crazier. But there's so much stuff to cover, and there are more things we're going to talk about, and more things we're going to highlight, and that will be on LinkedIn, that will be on various pages, and we'll make sure we get it out there.
Five questions we ask everyone.
Number 1, what was the last book you read?
Hang on, I got to go grab the title. Al, you do this one while I go grab it.
I'll do this one because I'm reading it right now. Islands in the Stream, because I'm going to Bimini this weekend.
Nice.
Oh, you softballed it. Oh, I've got a tough one. I've got Benjamin Barton, Professor Benjamin Barton, who we quote a lot in his stuff. Rebooting Justice. That's his new one.
Ben is the man.
Ben is the
we
man.
talked to Ben.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. Smart dude. Everybody read the book.
Yeah.
Number 2, what is your favorite place?
Favorite place?
Favorite place.
Key Biscayne, Florida. Paradise on earth.
Nice.
It's also where I live and where my wife is the mayor, so I had to get that in.
Ah, good.
And Roombas are outlawed. Home. I'm a home buddy. Wherever my family is.
Yeah. Excellent. Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
All right. So I have a website called technologyandlitigation.com. And that website is one page with nothing but links to all the other websites involved with litigation and technology. And that's my go-to site, because from there I go everywhere else.
Nice.
Yeah. I've got I had a bunch of stuff. Of course, there's Twitter, and this is where I get most of the stuff fed from. Bill Henderson's site on innovation and the law. There is Richard Troman's AI and the law. And there is one more, Mark Green, who does a daily update on AI and the law as well.
Number 4, if you were stranded on a desert island and could pick only one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Oh, mayonnaise, man. Come on.
Can you build a boat out of mayonnaise?
It's got all the other condiments in it.
Yeah. What condiment can you build a boat out of? Do not ask the professor, by the way. He had all those coconuts, and he still couldn't get them off the island.
Yeah.
It's obviously nothing coconut-based. I'm going to go with something obscure but awesome. I'm going to go with gochujang, Korean spice paste.
Nice. Okay, we've made it to the end. Number 5, after a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
Wow, that's the one that stumped us. You see, that's the lawyer personality taking over.
Yeah, totally.
Like, wow.
Guys ever relax?
Work? Wow, this was hard. You said it would be hard. I guess for Al, it's probably running away from Roombas.
You and me, brother.
Yeah, I'm with you.
The good thing is they don't move fast.
Yeah.
You know, until somebody de-silos them with those cars, maybe those rocket ships that Elon Musk is building, then it will be scary.
Exactly.
I'm just picturing like one of my kids dropping a cupcake and then the Roomba like just smearing it all over the place. I don't know.
Or it gets a taste for cupcakes and then...
Yeah, that's right. Climbing up the counter.
There we go. I can see it now. Leave us your cupcakes and tell me what the honor is. All right, I'll go first. In my rare spare time, I do a lot of dog rescue work. That's my thing.
Nice. That's awesome.
And it's far more altruistic than I do. And by the way, following Mike on Facebook, he does incredible things with the dog rescue. And I mean, they get dogs from abroad that land here and find homes. It's wonderful. For me, I do stand-up paddleboarding, and actually I'm a member of a club called Chico's Paddle Club, and Chico is a dog.
Wow.
So, there's a connection.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Cool. That's it. You made it to the end. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
This was such a pleasure. Really nice talking with everyone.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.